Welcome to Financial Issues, where we help you steward faithfully by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
This is Financial Issues, where we help you defund darkness and fund the light by investing with biblical integrity. Folks, welcome to our Monday show of Holy Week. It's great to be here with you all. Seth Udinsky, Sam Case, and your host, Mark Manila. Mark, good morning.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to be here with you.
We sure are. 610-363-1110. Folks, we got a busy show, a lot to get to, a lot to discuss today on this Monday before Easter. 610-363-1110. We want you to join the conversation. We got Stefan Padfield, guys, joining us later in the show. You know, the insidious human rights campaign will be the topic that we discuss. And there's a lot of things really behind this shadowy group that we need to know. The name itself is deceiving. Stefan has done some great work on this, so we're going to get his expert opinion on all of this, guys. But first and foremost, friends, partners, listeners, today's a very special day for us in the history of our ministry. It is the celebration of our founder, Dan Celia's homegoing. He went home to be with the Lord 4 years ago on this day. And so we still grieve that loss, folks, but we also celebrate Dan's gain. And so we'd like to spend this first segment in particular reflecting on Dan's life. And we would invite each of you, call into the program. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what Dan meant to you, what the ministry means to you. We're excited for what the Lord has in store for us ahead with Mark here on the team. But we also want to take this moment to look back. And by the way, at the end of today's show, we're also going to have a special little treat for you. If you stay on the website or the app, we're going to play a very special documentary that we created for Dan's memory. But Mark, I just want to open it up to you here, brother. You know, Sam and I got the opportunity to work closely with Dan for at least a year. Sam actually longer because he hired each of us. You obviously had a different relationship with Dan as you guys were both part of kind of that founding fathers generation of the biblically responsible movement. Could you speak to that, brother?
Oh, sure. I'm laughing because it sounds like, the way you said it, sounds like there was a group of us hiding in a cave plotting to do the BRI.
You guys were hiding in the cave where they stashed the gold, right? And then wherever that cave is.
But it was nothing like that. You know, Dan and I had a relationship, but it was nowhere near as intimate as like you have, Seth or Sam, or anybody there at Financial Issues, actually. I probably had a meal with him or an evening with him or maybe a couple of days with him once or twice a year, and that was it. You know, we'd meet at like the C&P with Art Alley, or we would meet for like the NACFC, or occasionally there was like twice I can think of where during some other convention or something, he and I found time to have lunch together and just talk about things. So effectively, it was a distant relationship of hopefully mutual respect. I had respect for him, and hopefully he had respect for me, because we were both on the same, headed in the same direction, but on different paths. God had him doing financial issues. He had me starting one of the first financial advisory services that was strict BRI, just like he had Art doing the mutual funds. So he had different people on different paths. Our paths continuously crossed and weaved, and obviously we held each other up. We strengthened one another in the small group, and you know, but it wasn't as intimate as you had, where you saw him every day. It was just good to get together, hear some insights, see some different perspectives from somebody doing something different, and it was really nice, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, my biggest memory is having ice cream with him and his wife in Orlando with Art and Bonnie, you know, Cindy and me. And
Mark, that was probably a delightful conversation. I could just imagine it at this point.
Well, Dan did have a sweet tooth. I know that.
He sure did, absolutely. I always crack up at the story. One of his daughters told the story at Dan's funeral service where he had, I think it wasn't lactose intolerant, but it was some kind of...
he was allergic to gluten.
Yeah, so it was gluten allergy, but he would like take a lot of Benadryl so he could eat a lot of pizza. And I just love that. I love that.
Well, I remember one time, Seth, he came on the show and we had jelly beans. It was around this time of year. We had jelly beans for Easter, and apparently they had wheat in them or gluten or something because he started coughing on air, and he's like, man, shouldn't have had those jelly beans, but I'm glad I did.
That's awesome. Mark, let me ask you this, brother. You know, you guys, I know I say this a lot, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but it's so important. You, Dan, Art Alley, those, as I call founding fathers, you guys paved the way for people like me and Sam and Kara over at the Timothy Plan and folks like that who are trying to carry the mantle forward. Can you give any encouragement to us as we're the young bucks? We don't really know a lot, or at least it feels that way sometimes. How would you encourage us?
Well, let me start by first explaining what frustrated me most over the last 30 years. And that was how few of the Christian community would embrace investing with biblical integrity. How few pastors were willing to dive in to realize the fullness of their stewardship by caring about what their investments were doing. How few individuals. It really, really frustrated me. And in the last 5 or so years, well, more than that, because before I was invited to be the host here, I was planning on launching stewardship training because I realized that most people don't understand the fullness of stewardship, what it really implies. So my encouragement would be, know that there is a remnant always that loves the Lord enough to do whatever God calls you to do. If God says, don't do this, then they don't do it. If it says do this, then they do it. Stewardship is part of that. And it's a smaller portion of the Christian community. And that's why financial issues, that's why Seth, Sam, you guys are so important for the future, because somebody has to carry that torch to continuously remind people. The Bible very, very clearly expresses how to honor God with all you are and all that he has entrusted to you. And that includes investing. So the encouragement would be, you're here on purpose. God has a plan. Don't get frustrated like I did for years upon years. Don't get defensive, but realize that it's a journey. It's not something that happens generally overnight for people. First, they have to understand investments. Then they have to understand stewardship. Then they have to put the two together, and then they can glorify God with it.
It's great, brother. Thank you so much, man. I know that Sam and I are not the only young ones out there. We got a lot of young partners here as well, but looking for that wisdom. I so appreciate you giving it to us.
That phrase remnant, too, that was something Dan was always hammering home, that there's always a remnant. God always provides that remnant, so you shouldn't get discouraged.
And I would argue, Sam and Mark, you guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think it's probably bigger than we naturally think. You usually think, oh, I'm the only one, or it's a couple of us. It's probably bigger than that. God,
we're like Elijah. I'm the only one left. Just take me now. There's no point.
Exactly.
Well, no, that's well said, Seth, because so many times new clients would come in the office, we'd review their portfolio, I'd screen it for them, and oftentimes there'd be tears where people would just look at me and say, I just didn't know. So true believers, strong believers, people who are pursuing Christ with abandonment as we're supposed to, they get it.
Yeah.
Marginal believers, those who know who Christ is but haven't fully surrendered, not so much.
Well said, brother. Well, folks, listen, we want to hear from you as well. Give us a call, 610-363-1110, what Dan meant to you, the ministry meant to you. Of course, your questions as well. In the next segment, we're hearing from Stefan Padfield. Before we get to that, though, folks, at the end of this segment, we've got a special little treat for you. Wanted to give you a little Dan clip, again, as we celebrate the 4th anniversary of Dan's homegoing here. So you'll see that in just a moment. Also, let me remind you, at the end of today's show, we have a special little bonus overtime this week. So stay on. At the end of today's show, we're going to air a very special tribute documentary we created for Dan Celia a couple years ago. It's called As a Son of Issachar. I think you'll really enjoy it if you've never gotten the chance to see it. We're going to keep the stream going on financialissues.org/watch. You can also watch on the app as well, or the social stream. So if you're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, X, just stay on there at the top of the next hour after the live show. Make sure to stay on and watch that.
It's like a special Dan overtime.
Absolutely. So we hope that you all will enjoy that. But as for right now, we have a once again, this very special clip of Dan coming up here. And then in the next segment, Stefan Padfield's going to join us. I'm looking forward to that conversation, guys. There's a lot going on with the HRC that we need to know of. But for now, enjoy this clip of our founder, Dan Celia.
I want from you is that you guys would be passionate and committed to the same. You don't have to be committed to it to the same level I am, but to be committed that I'm not, listen, I grieve God's heart enough, or I have enough over my lifetime. I am blessed that he has allowed me to put food on the table every day. He doesn't promise us riches. He promises to provide for our needs. He does promise to bless us as we bless him in his work. We will be blessed. Now, I don't know where that blessing's coming. I don't know what's coming here on earth or it's coming in glory. I'll take it in glory. That suit me fine. But we know he's going to bless it. Can we take a sigh of relief knowing that I am pleasing God and what I'm doing with the money that he has provided me? So why wouldn't he, since we have been faithful with the little that he's given us, why wouldn't he want to give us more?
Fear and uncertainty.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That he loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That he will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on him no matter what happens.
Help reach kids with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurschools.com. Have you ever wanted to manage your own investments but lack the time to research stocks that are both profitable and biblically responsible? That's where Financial Issues comes in. We're a nonprofit ministry that equips Christians to manage their own portfolios without compromising their values. We handle the details so you can focus on what you do best. This is biblically responsible investing made simple. To start managing your money with confidence and conviction, go to financialissues.org.
I found out I was pregnant when I was 21 years old. For me, I was scared, I was shaking. They do an ultrasound, and that's when everything changed. When I saw my baby, and when I heard her heartbeat, that was it. We've seen the hand of God ever since we stepped into the pregnancy center.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
We want to hear from you, folks. Give us a call, 610-363-1110. Phone lines are open. But right now, guys, boy, I'm very excited for the conversation we have incoming here regarding this insidious group, Sam, known as the Human Rights Campaign, the HRC for short. It gives me a bad taste in my mouth. That's exactly right. Sam, what exactly is going on here?
That's right. The not-so-aptly named Human Rights Campaign released its latest Corporate Equality Index this year, grading companies on their commitment to all things LGBT, announcing that 765 employers achieved a top score of 100, including 108 Fortune 500 companies as well. Our friend Stefan Padfield at the Heritage Foundation says this alignment between companies and the HRC creates a tension with President Trump's ongoing executive orders, cracking down specifically on transgender ideology and could even amount to a breach of fiduciary duties. He said in a recent article, quote, "Of course, private companies have a great deal of freedom in terms of deciding the extent to which they want to align with either side of this debate, but what they arguably aren't free to do, at least to the extent that they have public shareholders who are owed fiduciary duties, is to ignore this tension and go all in on transgenderism."
Wow. Welcome to the show, Stefan. Stefan, are you with us? Okay, Stefan Padfield, principal of the Free Enterprise Initiative and senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Welcome to the show. Tell us, how does this HRC system work?
Yeah, so to take a big step back, Human Rights Campaign, they have a corporate equality index. And so specifically in terms of pushing corporations to radical leftist positions, particularly around transgenderism, they basically put out these scores and do these surveys on an annual basis. And they have managed to make it something that corporations aspire to get 100 points, I should say, on the Corporate Equality Index, and even to partner with the Human Rights Campaign. And one of the ways they've done this is they started with some issues that are far less controversial, right? Sort of basic equality rights that, we can still debate, but are much less controversial than, genital mutilation surgery for minors, that sort of thing, right? But they've moved the goalposts every year. And so once they got their hooks into corporate America and basically made corporate America very comfortable and made it important to say you got a 100% score, they kept moving the goalposts year after year after year to the point where now to get 100%, to be a partner as a corporation really means that you are teeing up some very radical positions. And what I did in my article that you just quoted from is really point out the tension specifically with one of President Trump's recent executive orders that focuses on the rights of women in biological reality.
Well, why would a corporation look forward to, why would they even fill out why would they even cooperate at all with HRC? What's in it for them?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of answers to that, right? It's never more than just one type, at least in my experience. So part of it is you have human rights bureaucracies in a lot of these corporations that are true believers. They're basically activists, right? And so they get a lot of leeway. So maybe something comes across the CEO's desk, maybe the board gets a little report if they do it all, right? And they're told, oh, this is, what could be wrong with human rights? What could be wrong with equality? Just sign off on this, right? And so it's getting pushed by these radicals. The other piece of it is, and this is related, you have individuals that are just not informed enough. And part of my point is often that you need to be more informed. And in fact, fiduciary duty requires you to be more informed. I think calling that group useful idiots is a little harsh, but there is some truth to that. And then you've got the folks that are just pure opportunists, right? So they think, well, hey, during the Biden administration, they flew the pride flags over the White House, probably even higher than the U.S. flag. So we're going to get behind this because we see opportunities here, right? And so with those folks, it's about changing the incentive structure, right? And making clear that, hey, if you think this was a gravy train, right, this is not the way to go. And then you've got the employee pressures. You've got certainly on the consumer level, you've got groups that are very well organized that likely don't represent the mass of the populace, right? It's probably an 80-20 issue on a lot of these specific points, and yet they're able to mobilize in a way because they've got a good history there of being effective to make it look like, oh, you better be on board with this agenda or else you're going to get, people outside of your corporate offices and your stores with banners.
Stefan, I remember in the early 90s, before the BRI movement, before HRC, before any of this really happened, I used to write to corporations and ask them questions about what they did with their profits, what they did, to help me screen these companies for, we called it faith-based investing back then. I would say that 99% of the corporations never got back to me. And the rest, it took anywhere from 6 to 12 months before I heard back from them. And they didn't do my survey. They just had some generic answer generally. So I got to say, this is a one-sided thing. It's very one-sided in the pressure, like you said, from the government through the Biden administration and the Obama administration pressuring, not only pressuring, it was a carrot and stick. I know a lot of money was given to corporations to enhance their human, I don't know, they enhance the left agenda is what it came down to if you bought into it. But I don't understand why today any corporation would complete this survey, because it's just setting them up for contention and problems. As a investor, I don't want to see my corporations that I'm invested in getting involved in somebody's left-wing or even way right-wing agenda. I want them to do what they were supposed to do, and that's build a company that makes me money and do so in a way that honors God without using and abusing people. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Unfortunately, we are seeing a lot of corporations moving back to the position of saying we just don't do surveys, right? I mean, I have engaged with corporations on this point, and it used to be a two-part proposition, right? So one was, look, we don't think you should be doing these surveys at all, right? Just focus on your bottom line. But if you're going to do them, then you should also do, for example, ADF's survey, right? They also have a survey that is basically some version of getting a sense of where the company stands from a religious freedom and viewpoint diversity standpoint, right? To do the HRC's Corporate Equality Index survey and not do ADF's Business Viewpoint Diversity survey is just pure bias, right? And so I think, fortunately, what we're seeing now is retrenchment. And, you and I were talking before we got on live about the ways in which HRC may be manipulating the numbers now, that there's this real backlash or retreat back to neutral or back to business, however you want to phrase it. And one of the ways is that they are basically still putting out scores of companies, but they're unverified, right? And so as opposed to getting the survey back, they're just going back to public information, old information, and giving a score that way. So it can look like, oh, we've got all these companies, they're all scoring 100. But if you actually click on the corporation on their website, you'll see it, a lot of them are now unverified scores. So I think they've lost something like, I want to say, 33 to 65% of their partners, right? So it's still a significant group, still too significant, too many corporations, but they've definitely taken a back step there. And then the number of corporations that are just not filling out the survey. And in fact, in engagements, we've brought that to the attention of some corporations where they've then circled back to HRC and said, look, you can't have us up there as if we're responding to your survey, because we're not. So those things are improving, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and the whole idea of this is the more corporations they can say are behind them, the more they use this as intimidation to make everybody else feel like they're on the wrong side of the issue, instead of just making people feel comfortable about where they're at. It's kind of like the news. You see a newscast and they show a group of people, but the camera's pretty focused in, and they talk about the millions of people that are in this rally. And then if you see a picture of the actual number of people, the camera caught the bulk of them, the rest of them are barely there. It made it look like a huge group. That's what HRC is doing, first of all. And secondly, there are organizations that use HRC to screen companies for biblical responsible investing. And if HRC is using old data, not true surveys, companies that didn't survey, and giving people a score based on hearsay from other organizations or web stuff, then effectively it's misinformation. So even the screening criteria, not the evaluator, but others, is a miss.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think the way in which, you have to give credit to leftists generally, and certainly to the HRC specifically, because this was very thoughtful. They knew what they were doing, right? Again, they start with a very low bar with issues that they can get a lot of support around. And then once they've got those partners, once they've got those corporations doing the survey, getting 100%, it's exactly like you said. Now they go to the other corporations and then, why aren't you doing this?
Why aren't you part of this? Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and
well,
meanwhile,
Stefan, we only got a couple of minutes left here. So I'd like to ask you, how do we fight against the work that the HRC is doing? How can the ordinary investor get involved?
Yeah, so I think there's generally there's a number of ways, right? So there's always this big debate about, do I just get rid of corporations that are doing things I don't like in terms of being a shareholder, or do I make my voice heard as a shareholder? And it can be a little bit of both, right? But on a very basic level, on a very basic level, you can send letters to the board, you can vote in shareholder proposals if you own the stock directly, you can let your asset manager know that you are concerned about what this signifies about the corporation, and certainly you can also make your your voice heard as a consumer without necessarily getting rid of the stock. So there's a lot of things you can do. I would very much encourage folks to follow us at Heritage, at the Free Enterprise Initiative. We've got a newsletter that'll be coming out shortly, and we'll keep you up to date on these relevant issues and things that you can do as a shareholder, as a consumer, as just a concerned citizen.
Can you give that website again, please?
Sure. So if you go to heritage.org, and you just search for either FEI or Free Enterprise Initiative, you'll get to our webpage, and there's a link there for signing up for our newsletter.
Well, thank you so much, Stefan. It's great having you on. I think you clarified a lot of things about HRC and the power that is there on the left side, and how corporations have been manipulated, and how even HRC manipulates data to make everybody feel like they're wrong if they're not on board. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all the hard work you're doing with that. We really appreciate that. And I hope you'll come back again real soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, and great to be here, and have a great day.
Thank you. That's Stefan Padfield, Principal for Free Enterprise Initiative and Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. We are so blessed to have great people to bring on the show to help us break down and understand these things so we can be better investors, so we can honor God in all we do. The number is 610-363-1110. Give us a call.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
My baby was like this big. He was like this tiny little spectrum of hope and this unnamed beauty, in a sense. It was poetic. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And I mean, I went from, I don't want this baby, it's just a fetus, it's just cells put together, to talking to my child on the screen, and feeling really protective, and knowing that there's life growing inside. I mean, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to mom. I'm a mom.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Navigating through investment options can be
Folks, it was great to have Stefan Padfield on the show. Love that interview. Heritage.org. You can check out the Heritage Foundation there and then search for Free Enterprise. If you type in Free Enterprise in the search bar, you'll be able to find what Stefan does. Amazing stuff there that he's doing. So awesome to get to have him on. And we'll be sure to have him back on again very soon, Mark, definitely. Mark, we got a fantastic comment in the chat here that I had to share with the general audience because it's just delightful. James from South Carolina, one of our faithful chat listeners, saying, every time I see the initials HRC, I think of Hillary Rodham Clinton. I guess the same difference. So there you go. James will love that, brother. Thank you.
Wow.
That's awesome.
The wit of our chat.
Oh, it's amazing, Mark. It really is delightful. Hey, folks, give us a call, 610-363-1110. By the way, stay on. End of the show. As soon as the show's over, we've got our tribute documentary for our founder, Dan Celia. You don't want to miss that. That's going to start right at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time on financialissues.org, on the app, and on our social streams. All right, Mark, let's move to something not so delightful, which is the markets. Friday, they finished a fifth losing week in a row. They were flirting with correction territory, and they hit correction territory. At least the Dow and the S&P 500 did. Friday's bell saw the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all well into the negative, as well as the Russell 2000. Mark, it begs a question here as we look at the markets going into correction territory. What's the difference between a pullback, a correction, a crash? How does a bear and a bull market fit into this? Are we now into a bear market? What would you tell us about all this, Mark?
Well, first of all, let's look at today's market. If we look at what's going on in the market today, we're up about 0.75% across the board. Gee, the markets go up as well as down. Sometimes we forget that after a month or so of negative returns in general. But yeah, the markets are crazy. So we've created labels, not us, not you and I, Seth. It's mostly Sam create. No,
I have that much influence,
it's all
guys.
Sam's fault. No.
But there's these labels that people over the years have put on things. One of them is noise. Noise is generally just the trading band of stocks in general, the markets in general. 0 to 5% up or down, either direction is normally considered just noise. When it gets between 5 and 10%, people start looking at it, calling a pullback. They say the markets are pulling back. Well, and I can see why that. So we label it a pullback, showing that the markets may be coming down a little bit from their highs and whatnot. A correction is a bit deeper. That's when it exceeds 10%. So, and most people would say, well, that's pretty serious. I lost 10% of my portfolio. That's why a label's put on it, because people then can say, well, the markets have corrected from its most recent peak or a recent peak high, it's down 10%.
And Mark, I apologize for the interruption, but this is something that I just want to clear up for our listeners. When you say it's corrected from the high, is it an all-time high that it recently hit, or is it just any high?
It depends the person you're talking to.
Okay,
but,
got it.
When we're talking about peak, usually when it's a high, it could be less than an all-time high. Let's say that 3 years ago it hit an all-time high, and then we went into a recession, and the markets went into recession for 2 or 3 years, a bear market, and then now it peaked at this high. The markets went up for a few months, but didn't hit the all-time peak, but then pulled back again and dropped 10%. They'd say, well, it's a correction from a correction. So these are just labels. That's the point I'm trying to make, though. These are labels to communicate a concept that the market has pulled back a certain percentage. That's all. It's not a indicator of what's to be. It's just what is. That's all it is.
Mark, you kind of broke me with the correction from the correction.
Yeah. Well, again, these are just words, and they're used every way possible, mostly by media to create anxiety, frustration, emotion, so that you'll watch them more, and that way they can sell more commercials. But what I'm trying to say is these are just labels that just say, hey, the market's pulled back 10% from its most recent peak. That's all it's saying. Not a big deal either way. It doesn't mean it's going to continue down that way. It may mean this is a flag to say, hey, maybe if you had set some stop losses, they're hitting now, because a lot of people seem to say, well, I don't want to lose more than 10% in any one product, so I'll put a stop loss on that. So they're getting stopped out on that. And we can talk about stop losses some other time. For those of you who don't know what that is, but some people do that.
Yeah.
The final one that I'd like people to understand, that what label that people always take is the term crash. And all that is instead of 10%, it means in a fairly short period of time, the market has dropped over 20%. Now, so we call that a crash because it seems like you dropped something, you know. When you drop something, it goes straight down. It isn't like a slow drip, like you're holding a bucket that's dripping away slowly. This is over a short period of time, or a fairly short period of time. We call that a crash. And again, the markets use this as a fear-mongering, create emotions, make sure you're watching them, because they'll always put in a link on the end, you know, stay tuned, because somewhere this afternoon we're going to talk about this, and this crash, how to get through this crash, what do you do in a crash, blah, 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 and they link it all together. And that's kind of good in some sense, but again, this is just a label we put on a 20% pullback in a short period of time, and just take it as that. It's information. For those who are long-term investors, what this means is that your portfolio has pulled back. Bear markets could be on the horizon. A bear market is when the market is more of a prolonged and decline of 20% or more. So it's just not the crash, but it stays down below 20% or more for a while. That's a bear market. Well, those bear markets are generally short compared to the bull markets, which is just the opposite of a bear market. So as long-term investors, we know that. We're not going to panic. We're going to ride it out. We're going to get rid of the weakness, because that's one thing that I like about bear markets is they expose companies' weaknesses. If people seem to be managing their debt okay and seem to be managing the company, when things get tough, the weakness of their management will show and things will break down. And we can say, oh, wow, look at that. They don't have the financial steel we want to keep. Let's get rid of that one. And since markets are down 20%, let's find one that's made of steel and has a high potential growth from here in, since it's pulled back so far, and get into that. So all these are just labels we use to help us understand where the market is in its normal cycles. And we don't panic because we trust in the Lord, not in our portfolios. Even though we're here to manage them, we're going to do the best we can to honor God with what he has entrusted to us. But we don't panic because the outcomes are his. Now, all those outside of financial issues, all those who aren't focused on the Lord but looking for their portfolios as security in this life, they have no hope. We need to be praying for them. They panic. There's all sorts of things that go on. Praise God, we have God.
Amen.
It's well said, brother. That really is.
Mark, you'd mentioned that bear markets don't last as long as bull markets. I actually have those numbers here. Average bear market lasts about a year on average, with losses around 30%. Average bull market, though, lasts about 5.5 years, gains of 250%. So put that in perspective there. That's
nice. And you want to hear something else? This is really kind of freaky. Nobody's talked about this yet. Nowhere, anywhere in the financial world, I can't find anybody talking about this. But these Trump accounts, think about this. If you have 10 million people opening up Trump accounts for a single kid, instead of 3 like the average family. Well, let's say 3. That's 15 million accounts that will be opened up for kids. Okay, even if the minimum's $1,000. We're talking about billions, tens of billions of dollars, even hundreds of billions over a 5-year period that is going to go into the market and just sit there. That is an inflation into these markets. There's a good chance this could stabilize the markets a little bit and push them up through the inflation of all this money following, just like IRAs did in the 70s and the 401ks did. I think that was in the early 80s or late 70s. You know, it changed the investment landscape and pushed all this money in the market that's never been there, and all that money is going to chase the same amount of stocks that are in there. So it could cause an inflation in the market. So it could actually cause a pretty neat bull market. Now, granted, it's a drop in the bucket compared to $60 trillion, give or take 10 trillion on any day that the New York Stock Exchange is, that the U.S. market is. But still, it will influence that. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Speaking of Trump accounts, I saw the latest IRS data shows about 4 million children are currently enrolled in that.
So, Mark, you said that's a drop in the bucket, and it certainly could be. It sounds like it could be a pretty big drop, though.
Well, it can be pretty. Yeah. And the 4 million that they're reporting is just beginning. Remember, it doesn't even start until July.
Right.
So we could see 40 million or more. It's going to be interesting to watch. I think that it could actually influence and cause a very strong bull market over time. Now, not right away, but a little bit at first, and then push it a little more forward. And because this money is going to be just sitting there, most likely for 18 years, it could help stabilize the markets a little bit even. So what's your thoughts on this? The number here is 610-363-1110. 610-363-1110. Hope I didn't hurt your brain any on that. I hope the label idea of crashes and pullbacks and corrections help. Give us a call. Let's talk.
My wife and I help lead a Crossroads Kids Club, and one of the girls, she said, Mr. Dave, you keep talking about like you didn't really believe in Jesus and you were like dead or something, and then like you believed in Jesus and then you're like alive, and I want to receive that. And so we just prayed there in our group to receive Jesus and owning this idea of life with Jesus for the first time.
Help reach kids with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachourschools.com.
As a member of Samaritan Ministries, your monthly share is a gift that goes directly to a real person in need. While that share takes care of the financial to his church. Glorify God with your health care. Send a note this month.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone, and ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, one of the great joys that I've had of being a part of this ministry now for over 5 years is that FISM is committed to standing firm on the truth. We have been ever since Dan started it, and Mark is continuing in that tradition now with the same kind of boldness that we're seeing there. And boy, guys, I got to tell you, we need to stand on the truth now, perhaps more than ever. It seems like our neighbors to the north have now made it illegal to speak the truth. Or at least that's what this potential law that's being thrown out is saying.
Absolutely,
Mark, you had shared this with us during the break. What's going on here?
Yeah, they're making the Bible hate speech. Anything to do with sexual immorality or lifestyle. If you quote the Bible, quote the Bible regarding those things that make something a sin, they consider it hate speech now. You could go to jail for that. This law passed yesterday.
And this is in Canada, right?
This is in Canada, right. So effectively, they've outlawed Christianity. A pastor who teaches about sexual morality the family being a man and a woman, sex is only sanctioned between a man and a woman who are married. If somebody preaches that and quotes from the Bible, they could go to jail.
Yeah, I'm reading this quote here from conservative member of Canadian Parliament. His name's Andrew Lawton. He's talking to the Daily Signal, and he says, under this new law, quote, the state will be able to jail people who express religious beliefs or quote religious texts the government finds offensive for up to 2 years. Crazy.
Wow. And people think this stuff ended when Christianity took over the Roman Empire. No, sir. And Mark, listen, it's no surprise. I mean, our Lord promised us. In fact, this very week that we're observing on Thursday, he had a long conversation with his disciples during Holy Thursday, and he told them this world will hate you because of me. Well, we see it right there in supposedly once Christian Canada now becoming a completely dystopian state. This is terrible, Mark. I mean, how do we fight against this?
Yeah, well, we need to first secure our country.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And remember, they're not going to attack us that way. There's too many Christians. They're not going to try and make something hate speech. Our Constitution protects us there. What they are going to do is try and destroy our country, so we change the Constitution. And they do that by running up the debt, causing us to default in the world with our debt, causing us to default financially as a country, and then throwing us into depression, throwing us into all sorts of financial difficulties, so that we'll cry out to the country, to those leaders who could take over and socialize us, instead of cry out to God. Here's the bottom line. Never do that. Do not let them do this. Let's vote in people who love the Lord. Let's vote in people who will do the right things, who will balance the budget, who will pay down our debt, stop spending money we don't have, and preserve our country so that we can be the beacon of light in this world. We are the last strong beacon of God's light in this world, us and Israel. We have no other countries that are as strong as us that can do this. We need to preserve this country. I know I'm speaking strongly about this, but you have a responsibility as a steward of God's to steward this country. This year's election is essential to vote in good people, strong people. Get a majority for those who are on the right, so that we can bring this back to a manageable country again and not go over that cliff.
Well said, Mark. You know, my opinion, and this may cause people to disagree, and I fully understand that, but you either have a Christian nation or you have what Canada has right now. You've outlawed Christianity. You either have a nation where God is submitted to in truth, in totality, in the laws. It doesn't mean that other religions are necessarily outlawed, but it means that the Christian religion is the foundation for that nation, or you have Canada. There is no middle ground. I may be too extreme.
It is that way.
Yeah.
That's why investing with biblical integrity is so important. I know people don't think it matters, but every dollar matters. Every dollar is a vote that you're voting for these companies. If you're investing in a company that is promoting LGBTQ, sexual immorality of any kind, that is leftist agendas of any kind, you are endorsing that with your vote, your dollar, your participation, your ownership in that company. The more people who stay away from those companies, the more these companies will get in line with doing what they're supposed to do, running companies, not trying to run our society into the ground so that their elitism can take over and they can enslave everybody in a socialist type of form. We need to be very careful about this. We need to be very serious about this. We need to become awake and aware and conscious of all this. There's compared to the number of people there are in our country, there's very few of us. Think about that. But what did God do with a few fish and a few loaves of bread? He can do the same with this remnant we call the biblically responsible remnant. He can change this country with just us if we do what he calls us to do. We have to trust him, have our hope in them, and then we need to act upon that. Because until you act, and if all you do is talk, you're no better than the demons who say, I believe in Jesus, I know he's real. Well, of course they do. But that doesn't mean they trust in him. That doesn't mean that they turn their life over to him. It doesn't mean they surrendered fully to him. Those of us who are in the BRI movement, who fully embrace it, have trusted Jesus Christ for their salvation and surrendered their life to God and pursue God, to walk in his way, to be more like God, be like Jesus, more like Jesus every day. Those people, that remnant, if they just act, if they show their faith by voting properly, stewarding the nation, by investing properly, stewarding their investments, by spending properly, stewarding their purchases. If they just do these things, our God is so mighty, he can use us, this few loaves of bread and fish, to change this nation and put it in the right direction. And I say amen to that.
Amen, brother. I say it as well, Mark. That's awesome. Hey, Mark, listen, we got a question here. And actually, before we get to this, let me just remind our listeners, stay on financialissues.org/watch or go to the app or our social streams and enjoy our tribute documentary to our founder, Dan Celia, immediately at the end of our show in about 5 minutes here. But before we get to that, Mark, we got a great question here from Rich in Columbus, Ohio. Rich is asking in regard to our interview with Stefan earlier, and he said, is there a productive way to communicate to company management that once they start compromising with the left, it will never stop? What would you say to him, Mark?
I think that's an excellent, and compose a letter to do so. But yeah, one of the things Stefan said is he really endorses the stock activists, the investment activists. I like that. There are certain people I think that should do that. That's their ministry. For most people, you should just avoid participating in these activities. But I like the way to do that is when a company goes dark, when they start doing something, when they start promoting, producing, profiting from anything anti-biblical, we shouldn't just run away. We should write a letter saying, hey, this is what happened, and this is why I'm selling my shares of your company and moving on to another company. If you ever decide to stop being biased and pushing your social agendas on a society, then maybe I will invest in your company again. Something like that. I think we even have a letter put together for that, don't we?
We do, Mark. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that people can download and send. So just don't sell the stock, but take the time to let them know why. Imagine if all our partners, when we do a sell alert because of a BRI infraction, sent that letter at the same time. That company would be inundated with that. It would stick. It would go to their minds. Even if they reject it, it's going to affect them somehow. And if there's any rational, godly people on the board, they're going to take note of that. So send the letter, then move on. So you have the stock activism and you have the biblical responsible investing both. You're not participating in that company's sin anymore, but you let them know why, and you gave them alert that there's many people like you and me out there, and that's a good thing.
Well said, Mark. Hey, here's a great encouragement from Denise on our chat. Wanted to share this Friday, didn't have the time to get to it. But she says, thank you, FISM. Your stewardship instruction made the decision to retire much easier. That's awesome, Denise. And then she says, every day I need to remember to trust God and not myself. Join the party, sister.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Trust God. Boy, those words, two very small words that mean a lot. Trust God. Stay focused on God. Stay focused on what is important, and that's our Father, our Savior. If we just stay focused on God, we have the peace that surpasses all understanding. We have the wisdom of eternity and the universe, the God who created it all. We have the strength of the one true God. We have His Spirit in us that will give us everything we need to act upon the wisdom and move forward properly. And that's so cool. We have something nobody else has. So be in prayer for the rest of them. Be sensitive to that too. Help people move forward. Just don't scream at them, but help them see the truth. Bring them Jesus. And let's see the world change, starting with our country. Thank you for being with us today. It's so great to have you here with us. We're so glad that you love the Lord, and we're so glad that you invest with biblical integrity. I look forward to being with you all tomorrow as we come back again to focus on honoring God in everything we do, including our investments. God bless everyone.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.